All right, thanks everyone for joining us today for this breakout session. And the themes for today is leadership, trust, intentional work, and community building. And I'm just going to shorthand call this the Japantown. Excuse me?
Do you want the door kind of closed?
No, it's okay. Yeah, the Japantown Women Leaders Panel. All right, so it's my honor to introduce three incredible leaders who are at the forefront of preserving, protecting, and uplifting our local Japantown community. So, Wisa, Uemura, Jen, Masuda, and Vanessa, Hatakeyama. So these women have been instrumental in resisting the erasure of our Japantown's history. They've also advocated for cultural preservation and senior wellness. They fostered intergenerational community resilience in all the work that they do, especially in their disparate backgrounds and fields, but very much interconnected. All right, so Wisa is a cultural steward and an advocate who ensures that the rich legacy of North American taiko remains accessible and relevant for future generations. And show of hands here, anyone able to join us in our morning plenary? All right, so hopefully you were here early enough to see taiko play. And then next we have Jen Masuda, who leads efforts to support the health and wellness and dignity of our elders in Japantown. Vanessa Hatakeyama is a fierce advocate who works tirelessly. I get emails from her all hours of the night. Probably some boundary issues here. And she's trying to make sure that we work together across communities so that our Japantown stories, the JA story, if I say JA, it means Japanese American. The JA stories, businesses, and landmarks continue to thrive, especially in the face of urban development and change. So their leadership is a testament to the power of women-led, community-driven activism. And we're so grateful to have them here today to share their insights, experiences, and visions for the future of Japantown. So please give a warm applause to welcome these three amazing women to our stage. Okay. So I'm going to start with my first question, and my first question, maybe what I ask for you to do is also just give a little bit of a background of yourself, maybe, because I think the first question relates to how your past kind of shapes your present, right, and potentially your future. So, okay, I'm going to get started. Day of Remembrance reminds us both historical trauma and activism against injustice is a continuous process. So how does this legacy influence your approach to community leadership, and what pivotal experiences shaped your path? Maybe we'll have Vanessa go first, just because you're to my direct left.
You went in the middle. So.
I know. Oh, okay, I got it. I'm going to change it up next time. Watch. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's working. Okay, great. Hello, everybody. Again, thank you so much. And also, thank you to Yvonne, who is another one of our powerful women leaders in Japantown. In so many different ways. She serves on the board of the Japanese American Museum of San Jose, and then also is just pretty much at any community event that happens in San Jose, Japantown, regardless of whose organization is hosting it, and often volunteering at them. So, round of applause for Yvonne as well. And so, you know, Day of Remembrance, of course, is an extremely meaningful event that we have in the Japanese American community. And for me, you know, both sets of grandparents in my family were incarcerated. And really, sometimes I reflect now that, like, I wouldn't actually even exist if it was not for Executive Order 9066 and the incarceration, which is, you know, a strange thing to think about, because I like to think it's a positive it's a positive thing that I'm here, but you know, it really did come from a very traumatic period in history, where, you know, my dad's family was in Salinas, and then during the World War II incarceration, they were forced to uproot to be in Poston, the incarceration camp in Poston, and then settled in Fresno afterwards. And you know, they weren't able to go back to Salinas because of various reasons, both economical and then also just due to the extreme racism that was happening in Salinas as a result of World War II. And so they all ended up in Fresno, which is, where my parents met. And so I wouldn't exist. And my grandparents on my mom's side, they met at Manzanar. So they wouldn't have met at all if not for for incarceration. So definitely Day of Remembrance it's like an interesting thing where you have to feel a certain amount of gratitude for the things that happened for your own existence, but it's also, it came from a very difficult situation. And I think realizing that was a big turning point for me of just thinking of my own lineage, especially as my grandparents have all passed away now, like that generation of the Nisei. There's only one left in our family who was incarcerated. So just when you're feeling that personal direct connection you have, just start to, they start to pass away as a generation, you do think about it more because you took for granted that presence and that direct connection. So I think that definitely framed a bit of how I think about DOR today and my connection to that history. But then also I was part of, and if there's any students out there, I was part of the program called the Nikkei Community Internship when I was in college about 1 million years ago. And that was really a leadership focused program for Japanese Americans that really helped me connect a lot with my roots outside of just my family. So really connecting it to at the time, the San Francisco Japantown community. And that was my first time ever interacting with a nonprofit organization that was focused on Japanese American history, or culture and identity. And I think it really influenced the type of work environment that, at the time I was young, so I thought like working all the time was lots of fun. Like I didn't know about like boundaries and stuff, and it just seemed like fun all the time. Both. I mean, I think it's carried over, but just that feeling of camaraderie of working with people in a mission-driven environment really influenced the type of work environment that I always sought out. So, and here I am, learning boundaries today.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for that. And also just a quick thing, I think I have some students here in my AAS 192, the JA class. We just watched your cousin's history and memory film, Ray Tajiri. So here we are. This is like generation. This is like an amazing family too.
Okay, but that's like they're related by marriage though. So we do like to take credit for them, but they are related by marriage. But still, they're very cool. Ria is really amazing.
Yeah. All right, and so Jen, would you like to share a little bit? And did you remember the question? How does the legacy influence your approach to community leadership?
So my answer is actually going to be quite different. So my family's experience is, we're from Hawaii. So if you're familiar, in Hawaii, the JAs were the majority, and only selected members of the community went to camps. And most of them were community leaders, or they held some position of power. And unfortunately, my great-grandfather was one of them that actually got picked up by the FBI in the middle of the night and taken away. The thing that is interesting is he's not a man of power. He actually got taken away because he had received a award from the Emperor of Japan. And I think some of us here in the room actually have received these awards from the Emperor even now, of recognition of maybe your anniversary as an organization. So these are awards that are just kind of handed out. Not that they're easy to get. They are special. But my great-grandfather had taken the census of the birth. He recorded all the births and the deaths in Hawaii. And he would send that information back to Japan. And that is why he was selected to go. And he was the only one. And stories that I heard from our family was they buried a lot of their belongings, anything that was very Japanese. They wrapped things in plastic and buried them under the house. And unfortunately, I think it was just mass panic, and a lot of those belongings actually had to be thrown out because they molded from all the moisture in the ground. Plus, they're in Manoa, so Manoa is known for just being damp and raining all the time. So, but that's really more for my family history. But my path to UIKai, we are the community senior center in Japantown. I actually come from a corporate background, but after my experience here working at UIKai, I can't see myself returning back to corporate. The mission and the services we provide to the seniors in the community, kind of like what Vanessa was talking about, just having a mission-driven purpose. It's easier waking up and going to work because you know why you're going to work. And it's been such a rewarding job to have. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Jen. Also a clap for Jen. One clap. And a shameless plug. So Nikkei Matsuri is April 27th this year, and UIKai has a 5K fun run. So the proceeds go to UIKai. And just a fun fact. Last year, I was running with my dog. You can also run with your dog, okay? And I was trying to go for the finish line, and the dog cuts me off, and I fall very dramatically right at the end. And the ladies at UIKai patched me up really well. So thank you so much, Jen, and your work there, and and making sure you have first aid kits. All right. So next we have Wisa.
Gosh, okay. I'm even a little bit more removed, I think. I also grew up in Hawaii, and my mic is very responsive, or maybe I'm just a projector. So Maui, Hawaii, none of my family were pulled out of our homes. So they were able to retain their jobs, primarily as farmers. In the case of my parents, they were young, of course, at the time of the war. They were left in their homes. So we didn't have that same sort of ripple down effect. Growing up in Hawaii, I actually spent probably most of my time and interest learning and dancing hula, the native Hawaiian dance. So in a lot of ways, I was closer to the native Hawaiian culture than my own Japanese culture. And another interesting fun fact about Hawaii is, you can't really say Japanese culture in Hawaii, like it's all bundled up. Like we call it local culture. Like all of the many different ethnicities that reside in Hawaii become part of local culture. So you don't know what's Chinese, what's Japanese, what's Hawaiian, what's anything. Like they're all together, and this is just what we do in Hawaii. So whether it's attending Bon Festival and dance during the summer, or going to Merry Monarch Festival or something, like it's all rolled into one. So it wasn't until I came to school here in California for Stanford University where I found taiko. I had seen taiko, it's there in Hawaii, but I hadn't really connected with it. But at that point, I saw it as college, as you all know, is a wonderful opportunity to explore new things and to break away from what you had done all of your life. So when I saw taiko for the first time, it called to me in a way that I hadn't felt a connection to something related to Japanese specific culture in the past. So I was still drawn to it for its artistic, creative, collective, holistic sort of performance style. And it wasn't until I got to San Jose Taiko after graduation that I connected it to my Japanese American identity. And that's the reason why I've stayed here after 27 years with San Jose Taiko, is because of that connection to my Japanese American identity, as well as the community of San Jose Japantown. Those two things hand in hand make it so much deeper of a purpose of doing an art form like taiko. I think as far as legacy of the generational or generational trauma, whether it's the Japanese American experience or, in our case, artistic innovation, it's so critical to know what has come before. You can't claim to say you're creating something new unless you know for sure that it's never happened before. So in the same way, I mean, so much of our work, even though we consider ourselves a bridge between past, present, and future, you need to know that past, and you have to hold on to that, like we are the connection, like we're holding hands with both the past and the future to ground us in the now of the present. Because as much as young people or younger people, because I was young when I started with Taiko, want to keep looking ahead and what can we do different and how can we claim our own space and our own voice, if we're only always looking at the past and past experience, I think it's so important to know and acknowledge what has happened, and all the things that make it possible for you to be able to do what you're doing right now, whether it's artistic or not. All the little things that had to happen for you to even exist, right? I mean, you have to know your own history, and I think the history of the community you're trying to serve, in order to help bridge it and take it into the future and make it sustainable.
Thank you so much for that, Wisa. Well, talking about the past, I'm also thinking that, you know, our past leaders tended to be very hetero-patriarchal. Okay, and so I'm not saying that, you know, we should resist tradition and all of that kind of stuff, but I'm sure as the three of you have been navigating the waters of being leaders in our community, that you've probably faced some resistance around change. So I guess the question here is, like, how have you navigated that, right? Like, honor and respecting that past, but also like trying to forge a future where we are more inclusive of our LGBTQ community, of the women of our community, and then also linking the younger folks with the older folks, right? Doing that kind of intergenerational work. So yeah, let's go with Jen.
Yeah, Jen.
If you can't tell, we're really good friends.
Well, okay. Kind of actually going off of what Wisa had said, about having the hand in the past, right? For UI Kai, since it's a senior center, you know, we have something called Kero, and that means honoring those that came before you. And that applies, I think, not just to the JA community, but for all of us here, right? We owe a lot to the generations before us who made many sacrifices so we could have the things that we have now. I mean, think about this, where we are sitting on the stage, women leaders in a community, has probably taken a long time to happen. It wasn't designed this way, it just turned out this way. And I think our community is fortunate. However, if one of us were a man, I mean, I think we would still continue to work really well with one another. It's just the kind of community we are.
It's okay.
Let one of them jump in and help too.
Yeah.
Community effort.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you know, the other thing is, and I don't really speak openly about it, but as you can tell, probably I'm a little confused myself. I'll just say it. I think a lot of people will be like, what are your pronouns? Just so you know, I'm a little older, so that whole pronoun thing before was just mind-boggling to me. But I do go by she, her, and I think the joke is always like, oh, but you have so much they energy, and it's true. I think I probably do identify as like non-binary, but it's such a new thing. But the thing that I love about the community that I'm in, I think, JAs, especially the older generations, I think they can be very conservative, but everyone has been nothing but welcoming in our community, and so I'm very grateful and thankful for that. I'm also grateful that there are seniors who will say, "You're the first gay person I know." Yeah, so it's kind of cute, right? But it's to be someone's first, right? So I really, I feel like it's very special. It's very something special. It also gives them an opportunity to ask me questions, right? And it's kind of broadening their, I think, perspectives as well. So.
Yeah, I think, I feel like I'm learning new things about everybody today too. But I think it just, Jen is like so good-natured and down to earth. And I feel like right now with the changes that we're going through, and how rapidly everything changes, like even I'm like, I don't know what's on TikTok. Like that's the one step beyond my social media capabilities. And things happen so fast, information is coming so rapidly, things change so quickly. Even for me as like a geriatric millennial, it's very disorienting. Like it is very fast. And so you can just, have compassion for your elders who it's like probably just dismayingly fast and a lot changing. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why we do see the type of leaders that we have now who are like all understanding people, who are good listeners, who are not too we're like judgmental in our heads, but like outward and like when we get together and like gossip. But I mean, who can really accept the people that you're working with, and just know that everybody's starting at different places, and some of them are very deeply rooted in traumatic experiences in their lives. Like a lot of you were talking about, sometimes there's a certain way that we've traditionally done things, and people can get really calcified in those ways. But I think Wisa was mentioning the intergenerational trauma. I mean, I think that's some leftover for some of our leaders from their experience in the incarceration camps, where they they really had to fight for very little recognition and to survive and to be accepted. And so I think some of that energy really carries over or feels like an essential part of survival, of representation. And I think now we're finding like, hey, the climate has changed, and there are still like a lot of challenges that are direct challenges that we have to face, and we do need some strong energy for that. But I think in terms of keeping the community cohesive, when now we have multiple generations included, there's a lot of bridging that has to happen. And so if you're not a good bridge in terms of being able to connect these two sides so that people can engage, it is really hard to be a leader, I think, in the community successfully. But I mean, I think it's, like all the people here on the stage are really good, like what you would call kind of people persons, even if they're all secretly introverts, but they are all good at engaging people. I think everybody's very gifted here at connecting and listening, which maybe that's like not what you write on your resume, but it is this intangible skill that I think is so important that all of the women leaders here really bring to the table.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for that. I think, after tonight, and my partner's in the audience, I think somewhere, I might probably sit in the dark alone watching like a murder show. So just to relax a little bit. So totally. But Wisa, would you like to add something?
Gosh, it's such a complex question. I think navigating change as a woman leader or not. I think, couple of things, fun facts. So one, my life and work partner, Franco Imperial, Artistic Director of San Jose Taiko, is sitting out in the audience. So he's gonna maybe laugh louder than some other people at some of the things I have to say. But a little bit of context, when I first came to San Jose Taiko, I was told that Hawaii-born and raised girls are not the same as mainland JA girls. And that's because very direct, I tell you what I want, I tell you what I think. I don't have any of the passive aggressiveness that historically or has been generalized for JA women. So in that way, I was never put in like a box. I mean, whether it was the way I was raised back in Hawaii, it was always I could be and do whatever I wanted. You know, of course, caring about the community and who I was affecting. But I mean, there was no limitations placed on either my gender or my age. So given that, I mean, I really come back to, and given what you two have also said, I think I come back to San Jose Taiko has really changed my style. In that being the bridge, San Jose Taiko being a bridge within the community, I've learned, and how do I want to put this? Being brought on to San Jose Taiko staff and performing company with baby boomer generation, and then now seeing Gen, I think we're in Z now, coming in through our performing company, you really see the differences between, I don't want to group us in these generations and think that that's all we are, because of course it's much more nuanced than that. But I definitely learned how to bring up potential change in a way that wouldn't be offensive or put the prior leaders on the defensive about why this change could be something we should consider. I mean, see, because when I first came in, I would have said, we gotta do this, because we're just not doing it right. But like, you learn that, I mean, they had reasons for doing what they did. And you have to take the time to figure out what it was. And it might have been just the people in the group at that time, or where the organization was at that time that led them to that decision. And then, you know, then you can navigate the conversation about why there might be different reasons for changing now, or different ways we can consider a response to that situation now. So that was something really important to still, again, acknowledge the whys and the what that had happened before, in order to promote or to advocate for change within an organization as old as San Jose Taiko. And I think something, at least as far as in our larger community, what I really think is, I mean, this is me with my just BA in psychology, but what I do think, even though JA older generations can be really conservative, I do believe, again, the incarceration and internment during World War II, that being othered for something as simple as something they could not change, which was their ancestry, I think that made them more open to how easy it is to be othered about things you can't change, or some things you can and some things you can't. And I think it's easy to, again, use that part in history to navigate and bring up conversation about how our community has changed. What are the different terms? And I mean, vocabulary is very hard to keep up with. I mean, there's new terms all the time. But like how it relates to today, and how I just said it, but how many different communities or populations can be easily othered, and why we need to, love is love, and why understanding and acceptance is so important across the board.
Wow, thank you so much for that. And I think also for our elders out there too, I hope you're seeing that this is what we're processing of our engagements and relationships kind of with you all too, because I feel like we have Susan Hayasa here in the front, also amazing Japantown leader, and she's often asked us like, what do the young people think? And I was like, I don't know, Susan. I don't know if I'm quite young anymore. But we do have young folks here in the audience, right? And so I'm gonna ask a question on your behalf, even though you didn't ask me to. But what advice do you have for them, the younger generations, to really get engaged? How do they contribute? Maybe it's not the vision of, I want to become an executive director of a nonprofit in Japantown, but like, how do you get started to just be involved in our community, in their community, and And I know all of you here are JA in background, but I like to joke, and Vanessa hears this often, is that I'm the token Chinese who's often late to things, and not on time, and very forthright in how I communicate, right? But as I've explained to others, it's not about identity politics. I don't have to be this or that, right? To advocate for particular causes or to be involved. And so I guess what that is like, what advice would you give to the young folks here, or not young, to whatever, however you identify, to get started?
I guess me.
Please.
Right, my turn. Let's see. I think just show up. I think so many nonprofit organizations, whether in Japantown or not, I mean, they are, I don't want to say desperate, but they are almost desperate for help, especially to connect to the younger generations, or young at heart, that are out there. And even if you're not like fully committed to the purpose, but you're interested in learning more, I think showing up is like most of the battle. They will find ways to have you contribute to the organization. I think beyond that, I think I wrote a couple of notes to this question. I think this is the right question. I think if you can go in, and this is something the now, at the age I am, I'm not going to say how old I am, but the age I am versus the 22-year-old that joined San Jose Taiko staff, I think, and a piece of advice that I would give is understand that your definition or expectations of what contribution or contributing means may be different than the people who you will be working with in any organization. And that can mean a lot of things, but I don't want to, again, overgeneralize, but I think, at least in my daughter, 12 years old, I think she feels like contribution on her end means doing stuff, like transact, like I have to do things in order for this to be my contribution to you. She doesn't yet understand that there's a lot of subtle or unsaid ways to contribute to an organization, whether it's just the moral support of being there, stacking papers in a really messy office, or data entry. I mean, like, there's many, many different levels, and that these are important, critical tasks that just the organization may not have the capacity to take care of all the time. And I don't want to say like you enter at a certain level and then you kind of grow with responsibility as the trust and the relationship deepens. But I think you showing up, you staying around when things get tough or when things are happening that you don't like, I mean, as far as like they're giving you work that you may not care the most for, I mean, if you keep coming and if you keep showing up, I think that builds trust over time, and then you will definitely increase your responsibilities in the organization. And I would probably say those who are already in the positions of leadership and those who had come before them, I mean, they so want to share their experience and their knowledge with you. So if you are patient enough and open enough to hear that, I mean, yeah, that does wonders for them personally as well as for the organization. And then, as they're telling you their story, you can say like, it's best if I record this so that we have this for all time. There's ways you can still insert your youthful energy and knowledge about all things social media or etc. that we don't know as well, but in a way that's really helpful to the organization. I think I'll start there. Oh, maybe Vanessa, go second.
Okay. Yes, everything that Wisa said, and we are kind of desperate a little bit for people, but we try to act cool about it. But yeah, I mean, what Wisa said, because the nonprofit world, the Japantown community world, it is a very high context situation. It's not a low context transactional thing. And for the most part, I think what we really usually want is somebody, like Lisa was saying, who's really going to stick it out through thick and thin. And that doesn't mean that you come in and you take over everything and you have a ton of responsibility. It is really about consistently showing up and showing that, you're committed, that you believe in the work that's being done, even if what you're doing is stuffing envelopes or just showing up and manning the registration table or something like that. There's just a ton of ways, but I think, because it is a high context culture and it really is based on relationships, putting the time into those relationships, even if you feel like, oh, I'm not really doing anything, like I'm just coming to these events and I'm not really doing anything. People seeing your face time after time, allowing them to get to know you and trust you and see that, like, oh, this person isn't just here for like their 10 hours of volunteer hours for like their high school credit or whatever, is really nice, because we want people who are gonna stick around and be part of this. It takes an incredible amount of work and emotional investment to make these organizations function and to work together in a community to keep the community going. It's just a lot of work, and so sometimes you do feel like, okay, if this person is not gonna stick around, maybe I can't keep chasing them and hoping that they're gonna help out. I'm gonna focus on maybe the person who doesn't have maybe the most obvious skill sets, but they're here every time and they show up and they really want to be here, and they're very earnest about it. I think that's always it's a really big deal, I think, to us. And yeah, I think it's just that transfer of knowledge, being willing to learn. And I think something I learned from one of Taiko's founders is the beginner's mind, right? Is to really come in and not think like, oh, I know how to do everything and I know how to fix this and I've got it all figured out. Really coming in with an open mind and being willing to accept what people are really trying to teach you and give you, because that also helps build that trust of people thinking like, oh, this person isn't here to just do what they think is best. They're here to be part of the community and part of the conversation. And I think that's just a really important part of being engaged. And even if all you're doing is showing up to events, like you're not volunteering, just if you're curious and you come to these events, you'll be surprised. People will recognize you. I feel like you just go a couple times and they recognize you. But, and not that you don't need any specific background to do that. I don't think none of us plan to be here, I don't think. We all have very different backgrounds and none of us were on this fast track to becoming a nonprofit ED. I think we all kind of stumbled in through it through different doors, and it just kind of over time, again, you were somebody who was trusted with more and more work, and despite any differences of your background or you not being local or whatever, people come to pull you in, or like Yvonne, like she was saying, or I don't like to say token Chinese because I feel uncomfortable saying that, but some people would see her as an outsider, but she showed up to everything, and she was like the star volunteer and did so much to bring resources to Japantown that at a certain point I don't think it doesn't matter what the background is. So I think it's just, again, showing up, no matter in what capacity it is, and not also pressuring yourself to have to do more and more and more, because with talking about boundaries, you're never going to feel like you're doing enough work. Probably there's always going to be more work, so contribute just whatever your part is, and I think we're all so happy with that, and you don't have to do everything. So boundaries.
Okay, I think as Vanessa said, none of us probably had planned to be an ED of the organizations that we represent. One thing that none of us had said is our organizations that we lead are quite old. We just celebrated our 50th anniversaries, San Jose Taiko and UI Kai. JAMS is at 38. So these organizations have been around for a long time, and none of us want to be the ED that sinks the ship, right? Right. I mean, it has been left in our care, and that is another reason why we have to also talk to the people of the past, because they have organizational knowledge and the history, right? That's very important, and we also need to find that common thread that runs from a long time ago to now and into the future. But speaking about getting involved with community and nonprofits. And I think we would all agree here is that our organizations are extremely understaffed. So for an example, UIKI, just in volunteers, if we put all our volunteers together and let's say we paid them a minimum wage, that amounts to over $250,000 in 1 year. Because we have to provide a lot of services for a lot of people who really need our help and our assistance. And I cannot do it by myself. I have an incredible team that I rely upon, and they do a wonderful job, but it takes so much more. And the thing that's great, you in the audience, you're young, you're strong, you're smart, you move a lot faster than we do. You all have gifts that you have been given. Some are artists, some have like video skills, some know social media, because I'll tell you, nobody in our office is good at it. Right? So, I mean, there's all these things that we need help at, and you all have skills or some gift. And maybe it's just, I'm really good with other people to make them feel special or belong. You could just sit there with somebody. And you know what? That's needed too. So everybody here has some kind of gift to give and contribute to the work that we're doing. And actually, my first job at UIKI, I was not the ED. I was actually the substitute driver. Yeah, because you know why? They needed help. And at the time, I was able to do that for them because I was caring for my grandmother with Alzheimer's. And that is how I stumbled upon UIKI. And eventually I ended up having to quit my career as in publishing to take care of her full time. But UIKI enabled me to continue to still contribute and do something that meant so much to the organization. And I'll tell you this, whatever you give is what you will get back. So know that, whatever you're doing for these people, you will feel so much better knowing that you've done something for someone else, and it'll actually lift up yourself and your feelings inside. So I always say, if someone's sad, if you're depressed, come volunteer, because it does help you connect with other people, and that connection is very special. Maybe not for you at first, but it might mean so much to the other person. So that's something. But again, your skill sets, we all need your help. And there's so many ways to give, be it filing paper, serving meals. We have Meals on Wheels, but anybody at any age has something to give, right? We have the older generations have a lot of knowledge. They have a lot of skill. How many people can still sew in this group, right?
Very little.
Susan, you're of the older people. sorry. No, because I'm probably the last generation that was required to go to sewing school. If you're a girl, you got to go to sewing school, right? But now, not that many people know how to sew or crochet or maybe cook, things like that. The older people all have that down, and they can teach us those kinds of things. But you know what? They also need our help. How to use the iPad, how to post things on social media, things like that. They want to date people, but they don't know how to do a profile. So, things like that. That's the kind of things how we can help each other, right? And so actually at UIKI during the summers we do offer a few intergenerational type of programs that have maybe older, 12 years old and up, and we do sewing projects or crochet or knitting, and the different generations can actually learn from each other. But you can get involved in any kind of way. Be a volunteer. You could even join the board. And maybe you don't have time, but you got money. That helps too. So there's all different kinds of ways you can contribute. So, and if you have any questions about it, please ask one of us. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
And that's true, yeah. As much as we do love volunteers, we also love donors. so if you know you're looking for a real simple way to get involved, always as a donor is very helpful too.
Or if you don't have disposable income, I mean, like taking a class. I think all of us offer different classes or sessions that you learn something, you get something out of it, but even that supports us through earned income. So thank you.
Yeah. If anybody is independently wealthy out there,
Yeah.
we're taking donations for all different causes. I would be remiss if I didn't bring it back to Asian American Studies. One is that, you know, clearly I have my ulterior motives as a faculty member in Asian American Studies, but knowing the history of these three organizations is that, especially I think for UI Kai and San Jose Taiko, roots in the movement, right? For serving the seniors. I think that was something that was born out of that Serve the People movement, the aging Issei generation, right? The Nisei and the we're getting there, but the Sansei in particular were like, we have, like you were talking about, Jen, taking care of your grandmother, right? Like we have these needs in our community and they are not being addressed by the resources that existed in the mainstream, so to speak, right? And so we're having our students work through these kind of ideas about power and resistance and then take that and serve the people, right? So I think that's where that came from. Also San Jose Taiko, some of the founders were alumni right here at San Jose State, founders of Asian American Studies. PJ and Roy Hirabayashi were also going to be doing a film screening for free on Monday, April 7th in this beautiful space here. So come through for that, right? And then for jams, I've made students read Gary Okihiro's texts, and I think in Asian American Studies we assign, as my friend Krishna lovingly calls him, Grandpa Gary, the late Grandpa Gary. He was also a founder of Jams Learning.
Yes, yeah, Gary was one of our last founders. He passed away last year. So now our so they were all founded definitely out of the activism of the 70s by the Sansei or third generation. And then Jams is we're a little bit younger, but ironically founded by an older group. We're founded more by Nisei. So the second generation who had that direct experience with incarceration and really saw and felt the need to tell the story of what happened, and it really started out in education, but then it kind of grew in, you know, as more stories and artifacts came forth. You know, what was once the Japanese American Resource Center eventually became the museum that we had today. And, you know, to Yvonne's point, like all of these, you know, maybe it's a senior center. When you think of senior center, maybe you don't think of like activism like or protest, but really all of our organizations are really rooted in a type of activism that I think for our founders they would not have considered it activism because they were like old school and they were like we don't do that, but I think yours were very much rooted in a spirit of activism, and ours it was an active activism, even if, you know, I don't even know if Gary would have called it that. He probably would have called it like research or education. But it really is like all of our, even if it is something just like serving like culturally rooted foods to our seniors as a senior meal program, like that is absolutely activism, and keeping our cultural arts alive activism, and, you know, telling our own story from our own perspective and, you know, with our own voices is absolutely activism. So it's alive and well, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about, theirs were intentionally, I think, more activism driven.
I just wanted to tie together both of your points. I mean, so both UI Kai, San Jose Taiko, Fuji Towers in Japantown, as well as Asian Law Alliance stemmed from a group of then college-age students, mostly attending San Jose State, not all, but mostly, that formed, I'm not going to remember the name of ACA, I think, ACA, and that stands for?
Asian for Community Action.
Asians for Community Action. I mean, and that, so young people just seeing a need that had to happen, coming together, and then they, you know, ended up splitting up into these different sort of focuses, but they realized what was needed, and they took it upon themselves to make it happen, whether it was Asian American Studies here at San Jose State, or any of our organizations. So, I mean, while we've been saying, yes, we must honor the past and our elders, I think there is so much power in youth and your fresh perspective, and I think you can mobilize and now the word is advocate and be an active participant in that change, no matter what age you are.
Yeah, actually during the lunch hour, I actually ran into Chris Kubo outside, and
They're upstairs right now.
Oh yeah, they're upstairs, and so they were in the ACA, and they don't like to take credit for it, but I was so honored to meet them because they're the ones, they and their friends, so it's Chris and Dan, started UI Kai way back when. But way back when, they identified the need because the Issei, first generation, they only spoke Japanese, so they're monolingual. So services here in California, or actually in the United States, right, it's all in English. So there really wasn't a place for them. And so they saw that need and started something where they could be cared for, have activities, have some lunch. But again, it took a group of people, students from San Jose State, to create that. So you, right, as Wisa's saying, you have the power to come together and create that. And sitting here in the front, Susan Massey, her husband was the first executive director of UI Kai, Tom Izu.
Also upstairs.
Also upstairs, and also now the board president for JAMS. So we're very interconnected. But
And also just a reminder that you don't really know that you're making history till like much later. Right? Like I like none of our founders started out and were like, we're going to revolutionize Japantown. They just kind of saw these needs and they just worked gradually over time to fill those needs. And like it probably started out very simple, very ragtag, you know, not very official at all. And you know, as simple as just meeting like maybe in like the Issei Memorial Building or something, and starting these conversations, which like Susan is like amazing at starting these conversations. Like the amount of things probably Susan is like hand and starting is like innumerable. But that's the thing. It's just like, you know, keep your eyes just focused on the work that you're doing, and before you know, and you might think that it's nothing. You're like, oh, it's so small. It's nothing's really happening. We're just doing this little thing. But like soon enough, you'll look back and you'll be like, oh my God, we created something. We did this thing and had no idea. So like take like selfies of your meetings and stuff, because seriously, like I wish they had documented those early days more so we could see them. And sometimes all we have is like a dusty stack of like old meeting minutes that were typed up. But just remember that what you're doing, you don't know that it is historic, but like you will probably look back one day and say like, oh, those were the reasons. We had no idea what we were doing and what was gonna come from this.
that's exactly what Chris said outside. She goes, you know, I can't believe it. I can't believe UI Kai is still around. and so, you know, it's so lovely to see. And I feel so honored to carry it out.
Well, I also went to Chris and Dan. They said that ACA, so Asians for Community Action, was really active, really amazing. But then they said that the moment also shifted and changed, and that it didn't last forever, right? And so I think for our students out there too, we have another very pivotal moment in our nation's history, right? And so perhaps it's another time for us to think about how do we organize around these things. And again, it's not everlasting. I hope this moment is not going to be everlasting. But there are opportunities for you to get together. And sorry, Susan, I'm going to put you out again. But Susan is an engineer, right?
Retired.
Retired, was an engineer, Stanford graduate. Probably one of the, I think in our conversations, few women in her engineering classes back then, right, at Stanford. That didn't hold her back from being an activist, from being in the community, right? And so take some classes to kind of build your understanding of these things, and you can do both, right? And so we have 15 minutes left in our session. I'd love to now open it up if there's anyone in the audience who would love to ask these amazing leaders questions. Yeah.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
That's fine. I volunteer for the African American Community Services Association down in San Jose.
Yeah.
And what I noticed, and what a lot of folks who go there or go there frequently tell me, is that their kids would go there during the summers for youth programs. And I'm sure that all of you have probably gone through some level of budget cuts that the city might have not given enough funds. And I know I don't have your tax records, but how would y'all tell me, as like a person who doesn't have like, who could just volunteer to help out during with these youth programs to like make sure that the kids of San Jose or Japantown or wherever have the ability to get in community too, so they can give back in the future and stuff like that? How would you advise that, you know, older, younger adults try their best to fill in the gaps?
If y'all could repeat that, just because I know we're recording, like the short version. So I believe the question, and I hope I get this right, is if we could share how we would approach like the defunding or the lack of funding in support of communities of color and their centers, and especially in regards to youth activities. Okay. Oh gosh, you just opened a big, huge door as far as philanthropy and a contributed income, especially in these times. Right now, I mean, if anybody's getting federal funding, I mean, we live in somewhat of a protected bubble being in the state of California. On the national level, I mean, across the board, there is a lot of concern for the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for Humanities. Basically anything that used to speak up and uplift voices of color and their experiences is now under attack. And it definitely receiving less support. They're saying we're still eligible to apply, but we're also potentially putting ourselves on a list of organizations to investigate as potentially terrorist organizations because we are supporting non-American ideals. So that aside, I'll get off my soapbox. That aside, what can we do? So, I mean, I would probably say it's going to be a little different for every organization. So the best thing, if you already were a volunteer or if you were been a student or youth that went through that program, if you're talking about a specific program like at AXA, I'd probably say go talk to the executive director or somebody there and say, what is it that you need? Like, this program is so important for the youth. What can you, like, they will be able to tell you. They probably already have leads that they're working on. They just don't have enough time and capacity to deal with it all. I mean, there's definitely things like your district council member has some funds that they can put together. I mean, I don't know how large of a program it is and how much it takes to fund it. Some of it can be done or replaced with volunteer staff instead of being paid staff, but yeah, I would probably start there. It is sometimes pretty specific to an organization, and they already probably have been thinking about it for a really long time, so they already have some things in place. But there is, like, you know, even writing up a newsletter focused on that program, giving a testimonial or getting a testimonial from a student or youth that went through that program and sending that out to their already existing donor base or somehow putting it on social media so that it can get more visibility to draw in. And don't be afraid. I mean, this is something we all had to learn. Don't be afraid to say, in order for this program to continue, we need your help. You need to send in money. Like, we need to raise X dollars in order for this program to happen for these youth, these number of kids who, you know, here's a testimony of how it benefited this certain student. I think those are super, super powerful in ways, because as we all know, we live in a ridiculously affluent area, but we have a huge range of economic wealth, right? So we know that not everybody is rich, but we do have a significant number of people who are very rich, and it's really about getting the story in front of them and making it relate to the things they care about. I think that would be my first bits of advice.
Oh, I think that's really good advice. Yeah, talk to the ED, tell them what you want to do, find out how much it's going to cost, because people will surprise you. If you're able to demonstrate and communicate exactly what you want to do, one day someone will just walk up to you and say, how much do you need? And they will give it to you. If they believe in you and what you want to do and what benefit is it going to bring to your group of people. The other thing I would suggest is partnering with other community. Maybe you want to do some kind of sports thing. Maybe there's another nonprofit that has a field that they would probably gladly let you use, but you partner together with other people kind of in the same boat. Maybe you need their field and they need the kids. So, you can benefit from one another. We all partner a lot in Japantown with one another, and I think that's one of our strengths. We're trying to operate less and less in silos, but to really think about how can we work together, because the better that we work together, the stronger our community, or actually our organizations will be, and it will also strengthen our community as a whole.
Yeah, I definitely +1 on both of those things. I mean, like, EDs are, in general, I don't know any ED who's not like severely under-resourced and like lacking for time. So a lot of times we don't have necessarily the ability to go out and ask or put proposals together, and having those volunteers who proactively come up and say like, I would like to help, it actually takes a huge burden, I think, off of us sometimes, because we're thinking about 5 things at once, and like carrying the weight of like these 50-year-old organizations on our shoulders. So I think having people actively come up and say like, I would like to help, like, how can I help? Like, it's both like emotional support, and then also it's very uplifting, but then also we love those volunteers who are like, I want to do more, or maybe it's time that you could consider joining a board, right, and having like a bigger stake in what the organization does. Be like somebody who's really helping figure out how to raise funds and keep the organization financially viable. If that's, of course that is a bigger time commitment, but really it is, as they're saying, leaning into those relationships in all areas with your strategic partnerships that can help you fulfill that work, or finding partners who are at local universities who also have access to different funds that can dovetail nicely with your mission. And then, also again, having the vulnerability to ask when you really are in trouble and need help. Because I think that's, I hate to ask for help. Like, it's really hard for me to ask for help, but sometimes you need to ask for help, and it needs to be in a direct way of saying like, we have a deficit for this program, that we are at risk of not being able to fund it. And I feel like oftentimes your donors will really rally. Sometimes they just don't know how much help that you need. And by communicating it in a way that's not so dire, but gives an aspirational inspiration for your donors to give joyfully and really feel their impact, is so important. And they're just waiting for that opportunity. And so I think really for us, leaning right now with the uncertain state of public funding, we're really going to have to lean into our partnerships and into our donors. So, yeah.
Good luck.
I know.
Other questions? Oh, Gina in the front. Ginny's coming with the mic.
Hi. This might be a little bit of a silly question, but I was wondering, as students who want to get involved, I feel like sometimes being a student on a campus is a little bit like living in an isolated bubble, because a campus community has so many of its own organizational structures, levels, whatever, that may be hard for it to get involved even on campus. And in terms of talking about building community connections, I was wondering, as students on campus who are navigating campus life, and trying to organize on campus, how would you recommend the best ways to also reach out to local community to make sure that we're not just working on campus, but that we can expand across the local community and work in a larger group, I would say.
Wow, let's see. I'm not going to remember the specific names. I think your new president and you have a department or an office of racial equity, I think, here on campus. I can tell you, I'm already on a list with them. And then there's also, I'm also not going to remember, I think there's different centers for the students that can help you. They already have connections with nonprofits in the broader area. So when you either have your idea, you've already got it going, and you're I just want to either share this idea with the community and see how we can help. I would connect with connect with those departments and those centers that they already have connections, I think, in the larger community. I'm trying to remember specifically. We all, you can do quick searches online, however you want to do it. As far as, we all have generic, reach out to us, contact us information. If you're just hey, I'm a student at SJSU, this is what a couple of friends and I are trying to do here on campus. We think, we're wondering if there's any need or interest from your organization to work with us. We're happy to work, respond to those emails or those inquiries, as well as typically, if we have time and if it does align, to work with the student organizations.
Yeah. And I will say, in general, especially if there is ample advance notice.
Yes, thank you.
That's the other thing. If it's tomorrow, we might not answer that email on time.
I will say we do get several requests for I'm a student, I'm doing a research project, can you interview tomorrow? that might not happen, but I think
Yeah, I think definitely from on your student side, making sure that there is advance notice for things, that you are reaching out well in advance, and just being respectful of everyone's time, as we try to do of everybody else's, and then also just being aware, knowing a little bit about the organization and doing your research on what their mission is, because we all are stewards of our missions, and so the programming and partnerships we do, they do generally have to align with our mission and the core things that we do. And then I would say definitely a great resource is Dr. Professor Yvonne Kwan. She seems to connect students very well with lots of organizations. But I think, again, it's building those relationships. So even the relationships with the professors that you have, they will probably also be really great resources for you and be able to point you in directions for that as well. But yeah, advance notice. I don't know. I feel that's the main thing is 6 weeks. 6 weeks in advance, ideally, if possible, please.
So I'm just going to say also, and just learn to draft professional emails. Don't embarrass us out there.
Chat GTP. Yeah. And again, as mentioned before, all of you have gifts. We welcome your gifts. So if you're a group, you're very focused on a certain area, and again, if it aligns with our needs and our mission, definitely. We would so appreciate that. Again, we don't have enough staff, so what you can help us with is always appreciated.
And I think, so we only have 2 more minutes left, and I see a hand from Paul and Susan. So maybe,
How do you like to go?
yeah, let's do it.
Do it.
Oh.
And if you have to go, we won't be
Thank you.
offended.
I'm one of those activists from the 70s that volunteered at Uemura and also at San Jose Taiko. I had a front seat row watching San Jose Taiko in 73 all the way to 77. You got so popular I couldn't even get a seat in the back row. So, and
I was not there, by the way.
Yeah, and of course I met Tom Izu, and he was an activist from UC Santa Cruz. I thought they had the best Asian American activist because of Tom Izu. And Richard Katsuda was from Stanford, and they put their power together and actually got Uemura started, I think.
Yes.
And so I volunteered. I was one of the volunteers, and I still hang out with those activists. And now we're with JAM because they're doing some things with the original core of people that was activists in the 1970s. So it's really an honor and a privilege for me to still be involved in the community. So thank you for your good work.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Our former assembly member, Paul Fong.
Thank you. I'll just say something really quick. Well, first of all, you guys make me so proud. I'm sitting here crying. Make me so happy. I'm just so proud of you guys. The question from the students, like what can students do? One of the things that has really occurred to me, like I like what you said, Wisa, about having a hand in the past and having a hand in the future. If students, and I also heard people say that, sometimes it's a scramble to provide an opportunity for students. So, one of the things that students like in ACA did is they all got together and they talked about it, and they figured out how they could contribute, not in a way that was in opposition to anything that was going on, but something that really collaborated with the Nisei's concern for their parents, and wouldn't it be great if you had like a group of 5 students that came repeatedly and then talked about it and came to you and said, we noticed that you have this need. Wouldn't that be great? Because you'd have that hand from the future, and it would be something that would really contribute. Anyway, that just occurred to me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for this just wonderful gathering together. Earlier in our plenary session, if you were there, we talked a lot about resistance and solidarity coming together across all of our similarities and also our differences. And the vibes for this panel is a little bit different from that morning session. But I think that you can, hopefully if you're in the audience and you're just wanting to learn more, I invite you to come and talk to them here, and just to see that we're all human in this process, and sometimes lives get busy, boundaries are poor, and but improving. But I think the call really is that the need is endless, right? And when whatever capacity that you can, just show up. And my only thing is to ask of at least our students is you show up and you be there, right? Don't show up just to check a box, because don't waste anyone's time. Don't give more work for any other person. And just out of respect for our community members, out of respect for yourself too. And I think, what was it, Jen, that you said or I forget already who said this, but you get what you give, yeah. Right? And so with that, do your readings. Just kidding. With that, please give a final applause to our amazing panelists. Thank you.